حبيبي كيفك؟ تمام الله يبارك امورك. تمام الله يجزيك خير. One second. Oh, okay. سويت خلاص. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. نسأل الله العلي القدير أن يجيرنا وإياكم من النار. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. إخوة الإسلام، جعل الله عز وجل للمسلم حقوقا على أخيه المسلم، وهذه الحقوق تؤدي إلى الحفاظ على الأخوة الإيمانية والأخوة الإسلامية، وتقوي روابط العلاقات الأخوية بين المسلمين. فرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: حق المسلم على المسلم 6، إذا لقيته فسلم عليه، وإذا دعاك فأجبه، وإذا استنصحك فانصح له، وإذا عطس فحمد الله فشمته، مرض فعده، وإذا مات فاتبعه. هذه أيها الإخوة 6 حقوق ذكرها رسولنا صلى الله عليه وسلم لكل مسلم على أخيه المسلم. My dear brothers and sisters, Allah Azza wa Jalla legislated for us in our deen al-Islam some rights over our brothers and sisters. These rights are mandated by Allah Azza wa Jalla and His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. These rights, they lead to the reservation of the brotherhood in Islam. These rights, they enforce and strengthen the tie between the brothers and the sisters to one another. And these rights, they make us love one another for the sake of Allah. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam summarized them in 6 rights. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in an authentic hadith, the rights of a Muslim over the other Muslims are 6. When you meet him, give him salam. That's the first one. The second one, when he calls you or invites you to his house, then answer his call. And the third one, if he asks you for advice, then give him an honest advice. And the fourth one, if he sneezes and says Alhamdulillah, then you have to reply to his sneeze by saying Yarhamukallah, Tashmeed. And the fifth one, if he is sick or he is ill, then you have to pay him a visit. And the last one, the 6th one, if he dies or when he dies, it is upon you to follow his janazah. The question that comes to mind for every one of us, do we fulfill these rights of our brothers and sisters over ourselves? Do we really exemplify what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wants from us? And the Salafus Salih, specifically as-Sahaba, they fulfill. Do we do that? To call one another my brother? Because obviously, every time you meet your brother, you say, Assalamu alaikum, my brother. It's a big statement. It's a huge statement. You entitle yourself to call him my brother, but do you fulfill the rights that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam indicated in this tremendous hadith? Do you give him salam all the time? Or do you give him salam only because you know him? And if there is another brother with him, do you give that brother salam as well? And if that brother of yours that you call my brother, do you fulfill the other rights that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us in this hadith? Let's go through each and every one of those rights to see if we fulfill them. If we fulfill them. Because the Sahaba, they did. One time Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked the audience. He said, who is fasting today? Abu Bakr said, oh Rasulullah, I am fasting today. He said, who visited a sick person? Nobody lifted his hand except Abu Bakr said, Ya Rasulullah, I visited a sick person today. He said, who gave sadaqah today? Abu Bakr again left like his hand and said, I did, Ya Rasulullah. Who followed janazah today? Again Abu Bakr. And any question that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked, except that Abu Bakr did it during that day. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told the Sahaba, ما اجتمعنا في رجل إلا دخل الجنة. Whenever these deeds are gathered in one man, in one time, except that you will enter Al-Jannah. So don't listen to this right and then think that if I don't, then it's okay. No, it is the right of your brother over yourself to fulfill this rights that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us. The first one is أن تسلم عليه إذا لقيته. To give him salam when you meet him. Why? Why do we give salam? Or to reply to his salam if he says assalamu alaykum. Because spreading salam is one of the best deeds that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us. A man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and said, Ya Rasulullah, ayyul islami khayr? What is the best thing in Islam? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, تطعم الطعام وتقرأ السلام على من عرفت ومن لم تعرف. The man asked, Ya Rasulullah, what is the best thing to do in Islam? He said, to feed people, تطعم الطعام, to give food to people. He did not say to give food to only Muslims. تطعم الطعام, to give food to whoever. If your neighbor is not a Muslim, and you have enough food and you know that he needs food, give him the food. تطعم الطعام, to give food, that's it. وتقرأ السلام على من عرفت ومن لم تعرف, and to spread salam, to give salam to those whom you know and to those whom you do not know. And here is the difference when we come to salam. We come into a gathering and we find people that we know but people that we do not. And obviously, strictly, directly we give salam to those who we know. And then we give salam to the other people. Or maybe sometimes we do not even give salam to those because we don't know them. And they are next to the man that you know. And if you want to give salam to a group of people, you have to have some etiquettes that come from the sunnah as well. You don't just come to your friend in the middle and you give him salam. You give salam from the right and you go on until the end. That's the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So feed food and give salam to those whom you know and to those whom you do not know. What do we do if you give salam? You create peace between you and the person that's next to you. You take off the grudges and the animosities and the hatred. You tell him that peace and I am in peace when we meet. You also remove any harm that will come your way, both of you. That's how salam is very powerful in our deen, my dear brothers and sisters. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us that salam cleans the heart from any diseases. And he told us that you will not enter al-Jannah until you believe. In one of the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لا تدخلوا الجنة حتى تؤمنوا. You will not enter Jannah until you believe. And you will not believe ولا تؤمنوا حتى تحابوا. And you will not believe until you love one another. ألا أدلكم على شيء إن فعلتموه تحاببتم. Shall I tell you about something, if you do it, if you perform it of one another? What is it, Ya Rasulullah? أفشوا السلام بينكم. Spread salam amongst yourselves. Very easy. It doesn't require any money. You don't have to give anything to the brother. Just say salam alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the first right. As for the second right, my dear brothers and sisters, is تجيبه إذا دعاك. When your brother calls you, invites you, you have to fulfill the invitation. Except if you have a very hardship that cannot, or that will prevent you from answering the call or the da'wah or the invitation of your brother. But otherwise, you have to answer the call of your brother and to fulfill his da'wah, his invitation. What do you do when you fulfill that invitation? You honor him. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya ikhwan, you have to understand who is your prophet. If you do not immerse yourself in the biography of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, by Allah you are missing a lot. Sayyidul Khalq, the master of the humanity, of mankind, the first person to enter al-Jannah, the first person to raise his head so that Allah will start Yawm al-Qiyamah. He was very down to earth. When a slave invites him to food, he comes to eat with the slave. He sits with him in the ground. Arrogance kills us. Arrogance creates division and hatred between us. And you say you love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit in your position as a believer. And you say, I love Muhammad, and Muhammad, you see him sitting with the slave and the poor and the rich, and you are invited, and you find excuses. I can't come. Why? Because man, this is my show, or my game. And you don't know the benefit of walking from your house to the house of the person that invites you. How much Allah Azza wa Jalla sent you al-malaika to be with you in that trip. Because you went to him for no reason except that you love him for the sake of Allah. When you are invited in a house and you answer, go and enter the house, and it has some etiquette how you go to the house. You go in and you come on time. You do not come late, so that they will not be worried about you like we do. I'm coming at 2 o'clock, but you show up at 4 o'clock. And the family has to wait for you so that you show up, because they want to honor you. Or you show up early before even they were ready for you. Come on time. And when you come, knock on the door nicely and say Assalamu alaikum, and make them aware that you are there. Identify yourself. Assalamu alaikum. I am so and so. On time. Not on the... That's the way that you should act when you are invited in the house of your brother when he invites you. When you come to his house, my dear brothers and sisters, you don't have to look left and right. You don't have to look at his furniture, at his house, how it looks like, whether he's rich or poor. Or look for any of his shortcomings. Maybe his house is dirty, as one of those diseases that we have in our hearts. We try to judge people based on the way they live. Do you know that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he was invited in al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, he went to as-Sama' as-Sabi'ah, to the malakut of Allah Azza wa Jalla. But look what he did. He was somewhere that you cannot even imagine. But his eyes were in front of him. مَا زَاغَ الْبَصَرُ وَمَا طَغَى, in Surah Al-Najm. His vision or his sight of looking did not go left or did not go right. In the malakut of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And he is allowed to look. He was invited by Allah, but yet, because he was له أدب مع ربه, he has adab with his Lord. While he was going with Jibreel, he did not look, let me sneak here, who's here, who's here, لا. Looking in front of him. ما زاغ البصر وما طغى. The sight of Rasulullah did not deviate left or right. And for you to come to anybody's house, it should be the case as well. And you should sit where the person tells you to sit. And you should honor him if he presents you food to eat. Like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When he was invited to a food, if he likes it, he eats from it. If he doesn't like it, he doesn't say anything, he doesn't comment, or he doesn't make any grimaces. Those are the etiquettes of being invited in somebody's house, my dear brothers and sisters. As for the third right, my dear brothers and sisters, is when he calls you and he asks you for nasiha. You have to give him nasiha. And don't make it fadiha. If he gives you a call and he says, please, I need your help and your advice, you give him a sincere advice. On the phone, but if he was in the middle of a crowd and you want to give him nasiha, single him out. Take him out of the crowd and give him nasiha in secret between you and him in a very soft, lenient way. Not to come in a gathering and start reprimanding him before his peers. That's not nasiha. That's not the etiquette of the prophets and messengers. The prophets were the best people to give nasiha. And amongst them Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Hud alayhi salam, he gave nasiha to his people. He said, وَأَنَا لَكُمْ نَاصِحٌ أَمِينٌ. And I am to you an advisor, the one who gives advice and trustworthy as well. As for the fourth right, my dear brothers and sisters, is when your brother sneezes and he says, Alhamdulillah, this is the condition. Then you reply to him, giving him tashmeed. Yarhamdulillah. And if you want to go to the length, the person that sneezes, and when he hears somebody saying to him after he says, Alhamdulillah, Yarhamdulillah, you have to say, what do you say? Yarhamdulillah. May Allah guide you and may Allah fix your affairs. As for the fourth one, for the fifth one, my dear brothers and sisters, for the fourth right, is that when he falls sick, you have to visit him. Visiting your brother who is sick is a tremendous reward. Because the one who does not visit his brother who is sick, Allah Azza wa Jalla on the day of judgment, He will reprimand him and He will ask him for it. يقول الله عز وجل يا عبد مرضت فلم تعدني. Allah will ask you, oh my slave, I was sick, but you did not visit me. And the slave will say, وَكَيْفَ تَمْرَضُ وَأَنْتَ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. How are you sick and you are the Lord of all that exists? Then Allah will tell him, مَرِضَ عَبْدِي فَلَمْ تَزُرْهُ وَلَوْ زُرْتَهُ لَوَجَدْتَنِي عِنْدَهُ. Then Allah will reply to him, my slave so-and-so, he was sick, and if had you visited him, you would find me there with him. That's why when somebody is sick, go there because Allah will be there. By the hadith of Rasulullah, the hadith of Qudsi, and some hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We fall short of the mark. We hear that somebody is in the ICU, intubated, ventilated, or he is in a nursing home, and you don't go even pay him a visit. Even his children, or his family and relatives, unfortunately, they don't even go to visit him. And we say that we are brothers, or we are relatives. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, my brothers, please come forward. There are brothers that are standing in the back there. Barakallahu. Leave some space for the brothers. Move in the front, inshallah. There is space in front of you. Barakallahu. Inshallah, move, inshallah. There is space in front of you. Alhamdulillah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa wala. My dear brothers and sisters, amongst the rights of ourselves over our brothers, or our brothers over ourselves, is that the sixth right is when somebody passes away or dies, we have to be in his funeral. And this is the main focal point of what I want to emphasize today. Lately, we've been hearing so many janazah. So many people die. And yet, when we come to the masjid to make salat al-janazah, you will find 7 people, 8 people, 9 people. And when we finish the salat al-janazah, we get to the graveyard, you end up with 5 people, 6 people in time instead of the congregation that was here. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is telling you that one of your rights over your brother is to follow him when he dies. وَإِذَا مَاتَ تَبَعْتَهُ. And if he dies, you have to follow him in janazah. Because one day, maybe you're carrying that janazah, remember that you will be carried. And you are in the burial place, burying that brother, and one day you will be buried. Nobody's gonna stay forever, because Allah Azza wa Jalla told us in the Quran, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul shall taste death. Think about it. Why do we come to janazah? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us that remembering death and janazah and being in janazah will always remind you that you will end up dying as well. You come to janazah because you understand that this is my destiny. This is my final point. The whims and the desires that we live in, they will vanish. This is the reality that we are heading to. And unfortunately, in the last week or two, every single day or every other day, there is an announcement for janazah. And when you come to janazah, barely we can make 2 lines, 3 lines. And you say to your brother, this is my brother or my neighbor that just passed away. And you don't come to his janazah. Or you don't go to the funeral place. Or to the graveyard. And you know that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he told us in the tremendous hadith, anyone who prays janazah and he follows that janazah to the graveyard, he has 2 rewards, 2 qirats. What is the qirat? It's almost the size of the mountain of Uhud in rewards, 2 of them. If you go and you pray janazah and you follow the janazah to the graveyard. So my dear brothers and sisters, this is the final call in this khutbah. We are a community of brothers and sisters. You may have relatives, you may not. But this community is your relatives and your brothers. When we hear that one of us is sick, we have to visit him. When we hear that somebody died, we have to be in his funeral. Except if you have a reason that is legit and you cannot attend, then Allah Azza wa Jalla knows your intention. But let's revive this sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Come to the janazah, follow the janazah, bury the janazah, and get the lesson from following the janazah. And remember that as you are carrying it, one day you will be carried as well. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الموت الفجاء. اللهم إنا نسألك التقى والعلا والعفاف والغنى. اللهم إنا نسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك. اللهم إنا نسألك الجنة وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل، ونعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل. اللهم يا رب اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وتولنا فيمن توليت واقض لنا خير ما قضيت إنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك تبارك ربنا وتعالى. اللهم يا رب انصر اخواننا في فلسطين، وانصر اخواننا في لبنان وفي السودان وفي سوريا وفي كشمير وفي كل بقاع العالم. اللهم انصرهم نصرا عزيزا مؤزرا يا رب العالمين. اللهم عليك بمن خذل هذا الدين ومن تواطأ على ضد هذا الدين اللهم اجعل كيدهم في نحورهم وأرنا فيهم يوما أسودا يا رب العالمين يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين وابعث في هذه الأمة من يقود أمرها ورشدها يا رب العالمين. اللهم إنا نسألك من فضلك. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر.